Howdy. Hey. Let's try that again. Howdy. Hey. There we go. How are you guys? All these smiling faces, bellies full of crawfish. You guys, I mean, how wonderful is that, right? Well, look, before I get started talking about the thing that I love dearly, how about a big round of applause for our hosts here today? Thank you guys so very, very much. I got to say, this is the most well-decorated place that I've spoken in ever. I mean, look at this. Isn't this wonderful? Well, all right. So let me begin by asking the question. Who here is ready for TEXIT? Okay. All right. I think we're good. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Appreciate it. My work here is done. All kidding aside, I love it when I ask that question. No matter where we go in Texas to talk about this particular issue, we always wind up in a room full of people who are beyond ready for TEXIT. We're ready to see Texas as a free, independent, self-governing nation, where our decisions begin and end at our borders, where no one outside of Texas has their thumb on us, where our policies and our laws are not dictated by the likes of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, or the remaining pack of Neanderthals up there in the House of Reprehensibles, or the United States Senate. But Texas, as a self-governing independent nation, run by the people that should rightfully run it, and that is Texans. Am I right? Yeah. Well, as Nate said, it's been a little bit of a journey for yours truly. August 24th, 1996. But I'm going to tell you, the story for this goes way back. We obviously know that Texas spent its time as an independent republic. Look at that beautiful seal on the floor right there. At one point in our history, Texas was a self-governing independent nation state. And we fought a war to make sure that happened. And lest anyone get the wrong impression, for example, people like Representative Jarvis Johnson, who is so lame that he can't beat Sheila Jackson Lee for a congressional seat. The Texas Revolution was about independence. Right. The men at the Alamo died for independence. How do we know this? How many of you folks know Travis's famous letter from the Alamo? The one where he signed it off and said, "Victory or death." Right? Notice it didn't say victory or until something else better comes along. It said victory or death, right? Well, you know, we've heard so much about that letter that it seems that the other letters that Travis wrote from the Alamo have been lost into the mists of time. But they exist. And in fact, Travis wrote a letter to his friend Jesse Grimes from the Alamo on March the 3rd, 1836. One day after independence was declared at Washington on the Brazos, and yet the Alamo defenders did not know it. But Travis penned in that letter these words. He said, "Let the convention go on and declare independence, and then the world and my men will know what we are fighting for. Independence." He said, if independence is not declared, we are prepared to lay down our arms and surrender. But under the flag of independence, my men will peril their lives 1,000 times. Independence. Around the world from that day to this, Texas has been known for its independent spirit. You guys are pretty independent, right? People think about Texas and they think about independence. Now, other people may classify it as something different, stubborn, bullheaded, but in the end, all roads lead back to this one factor. Texans, in spirit and by birth, are created to be independent. We chafe at anything else. In fact, after the Civil War, when the Constitution that we live under right now was penned, these are the first words that were included. Article 1, Section 1. And I want you to remember these words for the duration of our time together. Can you do that for me? This is what it says. Texas is a free and independent state. Think about that for a moment. The very first words in the Constitution that we live under right now say that Texas is a free and independent state. Do you feel like we're living in a free and independent state? Doesn't seem like much like it, does it? What a travesty. What a tragedy that the land, the country, the people that are known around the world for our fierce independence, whose very flag symbolizes independence with its lone star, that our own people don't feel like we are in a free and independent state. But you know, something about Article 1, Section 1 at the end of it, something that Texans really need to take to heart. Article 1, Section 1 ends with these words, that the perpetuity of the Union depends on the right of local self-government unimpaired to all the states. Now let me break that down for you. You see, I grew up not too far from here, deep in the woods in White Oak, Texas, home of the Roughnecks. So I'm going to break it down to you like I had to have it broken down to me as a roughneck. The perpetuity of the Union, our continued participation in the Union, depends, it all hinges on this, the right of local self-government, unimpaired. The right of local self-government, our ability as Texans to make decisions for Texas and have those decisions stick. And unimpaired. Not deferred, not overridden, not dodged, not destroyed, not taken from us. Unimpaired. So let me ask you this question. Do you feel like our right of self-government has been impaired? Yep. Oh my. I mean, did I take the jam out of your donut with that one? Because some of you seem like maybe you're on the fence about this. Do you really feel that our right of local self-government has been impaired? Yes. Okay. I thought so. Well, if this was a good news, bad news scenario, that would be the bad news. So you ready for some good news? You want some good news? Yeah. I like delivering good news. I hate getting pegged as bad cop all the time. So let me bring you some good news. You see, Article 1, Section 1 is followed by Article 1, Section 2. Imagine that, consistent numbering in a government document. Isn't that nice? Article 1, Section 2. Now I want you to keep this in your brain, just like that other thing that I said. I want you to file this away, keep this in the back of your head for the remainder of our time today. Here's what it says. All political power is inherent in the people. Let that sink in for a second. All political power is inherent in the people. So let me ask you this question. Who are we?
People.
We're the people. All political power is inherent in who?
The people.
Oh, come on, guys. That didn't sound very powerful at all. Let's try this again. I understand, like a fledgling gazelle, you are finding your power. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to give it to me. All political power is inherent in who?
The people.
The people. And who are we?
The people.
We are the people. So who in the world is responsible for fixing the mess that we are in? The people. You know, it's a lesson that our elected representatives seem to have forgotten. Have they not?
Yes.
They are supposed to be responsive to us, the people. If Article 1, Section 1 of the Texas Constitution says that the union's over based off of its criteria, right? That our right of local self-government has been impaired, then it is up to us under Article 1, Section 2 to do something about it. And so let me tell you what else it says. It says that the people have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their form of government in such manner as they may think expedient. You know what that means, folks? That means all these morons that are out there telling us that we can't TEXIT, that we can't rise up and become a self-governing independent nation, those that say that this is a violation of the Constitution just got checked by the Texas Bill of Rights, because it says that the people have at all times the inalienable right. And what does that mean? God-given, cannot be taken away. No governing document, no man, and no set of men can take that right from us. It means that I'm sure we got some fans of the right to keep and bear arms in this room. I get that vibe.
Yep.
Okay, I kind of thought so. Well, guess what? Your right to alter, reform, or abolish your form of government is right on par with your inalienable right to keep and bear arms, or your freedom of speech, or your ability to worship according to the dictates of your conscience. Inalienable. Can't be taken away. And I'm going to tell you what, that is great news. Because we have been, as Texans, subjected to Pied Piper after Pied Piper. The siren's song. We are one election away from fixing the federal system. Well, folks, can I be honest with you? Can I be straight? You appreciate somebody being straight, so you want it all straight and no chaser, right? Texans don't need to hear that crap anymore. It's become quite evident that there is no fixing the federal system. Am I right?
You're correct.
It's not going to get fixed. As someone who has been at this fight for Texas independence since August 24th, 1996, and been subjected to cycle after cycle of people promising to go up to Washington, D.C., the District of Criminals, Mordor on the Potomac, and tell us they're going to fix that garbage, I've not seen not a single thing fixed. Instead, it's only gotten worse. When you have presidential candidates, or people that were once presidential candidates sitting in the Oval Office that crisscross the country, peddling neo-Marxist philosophy, some that make Mao Zedong look like Pat Buchanan, then you know we got a problem. Now, I'm going to tell you, Texans didn't elect that. Nor did Texans join the Union so we could be a part of that and have our will as citizens of Texas overridden by a whole bunch of bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., did we? So you look at these faces of these men right here. If they were standing here right now and were faced with this same situation, what do you think they would be doing?
Fight.
I could tell you they wouldn't put up with the crap, would they? So here we are as Texans at a decision point. We have an opportunity ahead of us right now, as we have seen Texans everywhere standing up and not just looking at what the grievances are, but casting their eyes forward to the future to imagine what a free, independent, sovereign, self-governing Texas could look like as a nation among nations. Not content with just shaking their fists at the TV anymore, or writing tersely worded emails to their elected representatives, but standing up, speaking up, and stepping up to ensure that we are the authors of our future. Because it is abundantly clear that if Texans do not stand up and do what we have to do at this point in history and write our own history and create our own destiny, it will definitely be created for us. And not just us. Our children and their children and their children, and on and on and on, until future generations that are born on this continent do not know what Texas was, what it meant. They don't understand basic rights and freedoms. As we see the rest of the states slouch toward Gomorrah, we understand that we are at a pivotal time in our history. A moment that reminds me so much of the story of the Alamo, the 12th day at the Alamo. And as the story goes, William Barrett Travis, understanding they were not going to get reinforcements, called everyone in the courtyard and explained that there would be no reinforcements coming. No Houston, no Fannin, no help, no hope. But he said this: perhaps if we stay, we can buy Houston's army precious time to get ready to fight the Napoleon of the West. And he told the men, he says, I am going to stay here and I'm going to do my duty. And with that, he took out his sword and he drew a line from one end of the courtyard to the other. Imagine that walk. After 12 days of siege, I can't imagine he was sprinting drawing that line. But he drew that line. And he said that any man who will stay here and do their duty with me cross the line. That's the decision point that we as Texans are at. There is no neutral. There is no sit by in the bleachers and be a spectator. There is no getting to be a bench warmer. We are all at a critical decision point. We will be the arbiters of our future, or it will be created for us. Are you with me?
Yes.
So here's where things sit. TEXIT is gaining ground. It's gaining momentum. And we know this because we're following the process that was laid out at the inception of the Texas Nationalist movement. And we've seen the people stand up, speak up, step up. And we know that that next phase of this campaign to take Texas back rests in the Texas legislature. You see, fun fact about Texas law, we don't have citizen initiative here. Right? If this was just a matter of getting signatures on a petition to put it on a ballot, it had been done a long time ago. It's not what it is here. Here in Texas, decisions like this, decisions that have to be put to the people, we're going to have legislation to make it happen. And before this legislative session started, State Representative Kyle Biederman, I thank God for Kyle every single solitary day, exhibited tremendous courage, and he filed legislation that would put this issue on the ballot, that would at least give the people a voice in starting the process of figuring out how this is supposed to happen. And the people, in the numbers of hundreds of thousands, flooded their legislators, their phones, they visited their offices both at the Capitol and in the district. And Kyle was joined by some heroes. Folks like State Representative James White and Jeff Kaysen and some others. Phenomenal. Brian Slayton was one of them. You guys know Brian Slayton, right? They walked down to the clerk's office and they signed their name onto that bill proudly. But they were the only ones. Because after hundreds of thousands of attempted constituent interactions, the political establishment decided that your voice didn't need to be heard on the issue of Texas' future. You see, they made a decision for us, about us, without us. And as of about a week to 2 weeks ago, House Bill 1359 died by the calendar. Gone. The political establishment fought hard to kill it. And remember, it wasn't a TEXIT bill. It was a bill to ask you what you thought Texas should do. It wasn't a bill that pulled Texas out. It wasn't even a bill that gave us a vote on pulling Texas out. It was a bill that would have given you a vote to start the process of figuring out how we're going to do it, to answer the 9 million questions that always come about because of this. And the legislators had a couple of words for people like us. First and foremost, I'm going to do this again because I got to make sure of this. Who here's ready for TEXIT?
Yeah!
Okay, I just want to make sure, because according to some of these establishment politicians, you don't exist. Especially people like State Representative Jeff Leach, who said that no one supports this. That's funny, because we can't throw a rock without hitting TEXIT supporters. And probably more than one, depending on the size of the rock. But according to them, you don't exist, right? And that's their logic. Their logic is, follow me, because I'm going to give you some air quotes on the word logic. No one supports this, which we've just proven to be a lie. Proven also by the hundreds of thousands of constituent interactions. But here's what they're really saying. They're saying that we're not smart enough to choose for ourselves, that we're too ignorant to make the right decision. Because you see, the only reason they would fear putting it on the ballot is they're afraid it will win. Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. There's no cost for them to put it on a ballot. Zero. Doesn't cost them anything. Not a special election. Zero cost. And according to them, no one supports it. So why don't they want us to vote on it? Because they know beyond a shadow of a doubt, if it goes on the ballot, we win. Not by a little, but by an awful lot. And in doing so, expose them for what they've become, which is a AAA ball club for Washington, D.C. Last session, almost half of the bills filed referenced the federal government, a federal agency, a federal court decision, or a federal regulation. That means that the bills that affect us, that our legislators are spending their 140 days every other year going down there to decide, almost half of those are being written in the halls of Washington, D.C., or by K Street lobbyists. Not by us. Oh, it's about us. But they're not being written by us or for us. We know, just like they do, if we put TEXIT on a ballot, we win. We win by a lot. And that's what they're afraid of. What they're afraid of is that we will get a physical manifestation of Article 1, Section 2, where it says that all political power is inherent in the people. They want to be the ones that make the decisions for us. They don't want us making the decisions, because when we go to make a decision, we're going to think it through, and we're going to start examining fundamental issues of governance right here in our own backyard. We start kicking over rocks in Austin, there ain't no telling what we're going to find. Am I right?
That's right.
Maybe we'll get some answers to the question like, why hasn't Governor Abbott used his executive authority to deal with the issue on the southern border? I mean, let's be honest. He's shown that he is perfectly willing to exercise extraordinary executive authority to make sure that we all wear masks and to strip our liberties and our ability to go worship at church or transact business. He's shown he is perfectly willing to exercise that extraordinary executive authority there. But what about what's going on down there? I mean, we got a crisis down there, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about the governor who says his claim to fame is he sued the federal government more than any previous attorney general back when he was attorney general. Well, big deal. What has that gotten us? False hope is what it's gotten us. More empty promises and more political rhetoric. And folks, I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of it. It's time we do something about it. So if all roads to the Texas independence referendum lead through the legislature, lead through Austin, and those guys aren't up there are not representing us, then what's got to happen? They got to go. Am I right?
Right.
They got to go. If they do not represent us, then they cannot represent us. And so their time's coming. Because you see, a promise that we made at the beginning of the legislative session was this: the people of Texas will get a referendum on TEXIT in 2021, or there will be a referendum on the legislators in 2022. And it's time we do that. They denied us our fundamental right of self-government. They trample all over our rights under Article 1, Section 2, and they cannot stay. They cannot. But their fear, ultimately, is that when it goes on the ballot, we're going to win. And I'm going to tell you how we're going to win. You see, we know what the poll numbers are. We know that in third-party polls, time and time again, we show, for the longest time, just a plurality, but now a majority of Texans are ready to see this go. We know that even as early as 2014, that 54% of Republicans, half of independent voters, and 35% of Democrats were ready to skate out of this place to make Texas a free, independent, self-governing nation state. Can you imagine that those numbers have trended downward? Do you really think that? Because I know they haven't. We know we go to the polls, we're going to beat these guys 10 to 15 percentage points, maybe more. I mean, depends on what kind of wacky nonsense President Potato Head and the rest of the crew up there in D.C. gets up to between now and the vote, right? So, beyond the poll numbers, I'm going to tell you how I know we're going to win. Because no matter where we go, and we switch this up, and we present the question to these folks, to every Texan out there, and turn the tables, we get the answer that leads to TEXIT. And so I'm going to ask you that question right now. If at this very moment, Texas was a free, independent, self-governing nation, I want you to imagine it with me right now, that we were already independent in every single respect. We had control over our own immigration policy and our own borders. That'd be nice, right? We had our own currency, our own military. We were able to execute our own trade deals around the world in a way that benefited Texas businesses. We were able to choose as Texans if we wanted less regulation or more. I kind of think I know how we would choose. But in every respect, self-governing, independent nation among nations. And this question was being posed not as a TEXIT, but as this: what would you decide? You go to a ballot and you look down at the question, and it says, should the independent, self-governing nation of Texas join the Union? Imagine for a moment if you were to have to answer that question. Should Texas join the Union? How would you vote?
No.
Okay. No knee-jerk reactions here. Before you make your decision, I want to give you both sides. Fair and balanced. Is that okay with y'all? Just so you know, if Texas chooses to join the Union, day one, we get this wonderful thing called Federal Laws, Rules, and Regulations. 180,000 pages plus of them. So much so that if you were to print them out and stack up the paper, it would be taller than the San Jacinto Monument. That's a lot. Am I wrong? That's a lot of laws. But hey, they got every aspect of our lives figured out, stamped, in triplicate. The federal government will just, they'll tell us we don't have to do a whole lot of thinking anymore. They just have all these regulations. Hey, good news. Day one, as a new state of the Union, we get our lives run by 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats. I mean, not to mention the Schumers and Pelosi's of the world, right? But we get these 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats that are going to get to run our lives for us. I mean, that's pretty nice, huh? I mean, we always want a little help, huh? 2.5 million. Good news is they're divided into 440 separate agencies, so, we can at least kind of figure out maybe where some of them work. But I'll tell you this, good news, another big benefit that you may want to consider is that as Texans, we will get to overpay anywhere from $103 to $160 billion annually into the federal system. That's an overpayment, right? We get it. Now, we'll get all that federal money, but not before it gets like a 40 to 50% haircut. But, we're giving people, right? We like to help our neighbors in need. I mean, when California needs help funding its Pakistani gender studies programs, Texans are always here to lend a hand. $103 to $160 billion in money that goes into the federal system that we never see again. It's a benefit, right? I mean, let's talk about that federal debt. You know what? We're pretty doggone close to $30 trillion right now, aren't we? I mean, everybody likes to spread that around. Who doesn't love debt? Or let's talk about federal regulations that crush our economy. that destroy the bridge from poverty to prosperity and harm those that don't need to be economically harmed anymore. I mean, that's a benefit, right? All those regulations. I mean, it's only going to compress the value of your take-home pay by about 85%. That's a Benny, right? You know, I could go on and on, but you know, I'm not up here to sell the federal government to you, right? So let me ask that question again. Knowing everything that you know about our relationship with the federal government, how it would be, would you vote to join the union?
No. No. No.
I don't know. I think maybe I lost some of y'all. What was it? Was it their debt? Well, I mean, you guys like the debt, right?
We're considered.
You're considered. Okay, so you've moved from solidly in the Texas camp to on the bubble. Well, my work here is done. But no, I mean, ask yourself the question. I'm not being rhetorical. Would you vote to join the union?
No.
Well, of course not. And that's how I know that we're going to win. Because everywhere we go in Texas, we have that same conversation with Texans, and we ask them the same question, and no one would vote to join the union given the current circumstances. And the bottom line is, if you would never vote to join, why in the world would you ever vote to stay? The reaction of Texans to understanding our relationship in the union is all the proof that we need that when this thing goes on the ballot, we win. And I'm going to tell you what, after doing this for a very long time, I am so glad so many folks are catching up. Folks, as I get ready to wrap this thing up and go over here and join these fine folks on this podcast, where apparently we're going to handle the Q&A, right? Okay, they're going to give me the Guantanamo Bay treatment over there on the microphone. No waterboarding. Oh, if you want to, that's fine. I mean, I think probably with the sweat, I'm already doing a bit of that. It works for me. But as I wrap up and get ready to do this, this is what I want to leave you with. This fight for independence is not about a single politician. It's not about a single election. It's not about a single bill. It's not about a single legislative session. No. It's about independence. And it's about getting there. And it's about channeling that spirit that Travis channeled, that he expressed at the Alamo. Remember, I started off with this famous letter signed Victory or Death, right? It was not victory until, you know, I had my first setback or I didn't get what I wanted in a short enough time frame. It was victory or death. It was one way or the other. He was in it to win it, to the bitter end. You see, that was the decision I made August 24th, 1996. When I stepped across that proverbial line in the sand, it was to get Texas independent or keep working at it until the gravedigger was patting me in the face with a shovel. It was about getting the job done. Because, folks, I'm going to tell you, the alternative is not pretty. The cost for doing nothing, the cost for deprioritizing, the price that we pay is a wicked one, affecting not just this generation, but generations to come. And lest I get sappy about how I feel about our people here in Texas, let me just tell you this. People around the world are watching us. They're watching what we do. If you'll recall at the very beginning, I talked about how Texas is a symbol to people around the world, that our flag is a symbol of independence. The world is watching. And when I say the world, I don't just mean people across the seas. I mean people in other states. are watching what we do here. Places like Oklahoma, aka the largest county in Texas, they're watching us. People in states all around. People that live in states that have been consumed by the philosophy, the cancerous philosophy that is eating the heart out of what used to be America. People that exist in those states solely as a liberty-loving minority are watching what we do here. And every action that we take, every bold step, every time we stand up and speak up and step up, it inspires hope in those people. And folks, I don't know about you, but I would say that the world is due for a revival of liberty. Would you agree with me? So I'll leave you with these words before I turn the microphone over to wherever I got to go from here. This was all decided a long time ago. It was already envisioned how this was going to go. And I'm going to tell you, this man right here, Sam Houston. You see, not everyone in Texas was on board with Texas becoming a state of the Union. And to allay their fears, after the annexation, Sam Houston said this. He said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. He meant that at some day in the future, Texans from all socioeconomic groups and ethnic backgrounds, all Texans would come together and as Texas raise its head and stand among the nations. To no longer be subservient to a bunch of unelected bureaucrats, to live out the hope and promise that the blood that was spilled on that hallowed ground at Goliad and the Alamo and the victory shots that rang out at San Jacinto, to make sure that that legacy lived on. A legacy of freedom, liberty, and independence. So as Sam Houston said, Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. The question for you, my friends, is this: will you stand with her? Thank you all very much for your indulgence. Appreciate you so much.